Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the 15th episode of my podcast, Going Down the Road with Randy. We are in Australia, and we have been for several months. After working and saving money in Sydney, we are now traveling in our VW camper. Currently, it is just the two of us in the van. We have traveled up the east coast from Sydney all the way to Cooktown, and now it is time to turn our trusty Volkswagen camper van Stella Blue west and into the vast interior of Australia, known as the Outback. Our current destination is Uluru, or you might know it as Ayers Rock, which is pretty close to smack dab in the middle of fucking nowhere. From there, we'll head back north to Darwin, where we intend to leave the country and fly onward to Indonesia. It is Monday, August 26, 1991, and morning finds us camped in a rest area on the Flinders Highway, approximately 100 kilometers west of Charters Towers. If you look up desolate in the dictionary, there's a little picture of this rest area. Nothing to be seen but red dirt. If you look up gullible, there's a picture of you. Oh, wait, stop now. That's not nice at all. We're up early. The heat drives us from bed, and we drive through the nothingness towards Mount Isa, a mining town about 250 miles away. Did I mention that there's nothing out here? There are very few cars traveling the road. Not much to say, not much to see. We drive around Mount Isa hoping to pick up a hitchhiker to split gas costs with us, but there's no one. We camp at the lookout. Mount Isa is a T intersection, and the next morning we turn north on the Barkley Highway and begin the longest single day's drive yet, over 700 kilometers, from Mount Isa through Camooweal across nothingness to enter the Northern Territory of Australia. At Warramungu, or Three Ways, we intersect the Stewart Highway, also known as the Track. It is a two-lane road that runs for 2,700 kilometers from Darwin in the north to Port Augusta in South Australia, and it bisects the continent. We keep heading south now on the track, passing Tennant Creek, and finally give Stella a rest and camp at Devil's Marbles. During one stretch of the drive, we travel 400 kilometers with no town or dwelling in sight. We see plenty of roadkill, kangaroos, cattle, pigs, and large lizards. Shortly after entering the Northern Territory, we encounter a cow carcass burning on the side of the road. Very surreal, like a scene out of Mad Max. Sometimes we see a person walking in the middle of nowhere, not along the road, but like out in the desert. We see our first road train. A road train is a very large tractor pulling 3, sometimes 4 trailers, and it is best to give them as wide a berth as possible, as they can't stop and they're not very maneuverable. They tend to spray windshield shattering rocks in their wake. Many cars are equipped with screens to protect the windshield from rocks, but we don't have one of those. We also see signs warning us of wild camels. I wonder, what do I have to worry about from a wild camel? I mean, I know I don't want to hit one in the road, but what about if I stop to take a pee behind a bush and one runs up on me? What do I do then? I just don't know. The landscape here at Devil's Marbles is surreal. Large granite boulders lie scattered about as if tossed by some unseen hand. Many are perched on top of one another. Apparently, they are just the top of a large underground granite formation. They're known as Karlu Karlu by the Aborigines, and is a sacred site related to many of their Dreamtime origination stories. The heat wakes us up, and we continue driving south. The earth seems redder, and the heat may be less intense the farther south we go. Or is that my imagination? We meet Dave and Heidi, who are coming back north after their rock visit. They advise us against visiting Kings Canyon as they nearly destroyed their van on 200 kilometers of corrugated dirt road. Good to know, because we were definitely considering going there. We finally get into Alice Springs in the early afternoon and check into a caravan park for showers and laundry. They also have a refreshing swimming pool, which we take full advantage of. And there are some so cute little rock wallabies scampering about, and I feed them. Probably a no-no, but I don't care. I changed the oil in Stella. She has been working so hard and is running like a champion, and I'd like to keep it that way. These roads are no place to break down. Thursday, August 29th. We spend in Alice Springs, which is a very touristy town, the gateway to Uluru or Ayers Rock, though it is still a good 450 kilometers, about a 5-hour drive to reach our destination. Distances here take on a life of their own. A 10-hour round trip is seen as a day trip. The vast majority of visitors to the Rock fly into Alice Springs. We take a day off from driving to run errands. Go to the post office, phone home. We learn there's to be a rodeo on Saturday, and we discuss whether to stay and wait for it, but finally decide not to. In fact, we decide to go ahead and start driving to the Rock when we meet Paul and Janet coming the other way. It is a testament to the paucity of traffic that you can recognize folks driving opposite you in the vast wasteland. If you remember, I took my open water diving course with Paul and Janet in Airlie Beach in episode 5. We have a roadside conference, and we decide to stay and party tonight with these two. They are staying at the Good Day Mate Caravan Park, and they give us 2 entry tickets to the national park that are still good, which saves us $8 each. Every little bit helps. We make dinner in Stella and drink lots of wine and pass out. The heat wakes us up again, and we say our goodbyes and drive to the Rock, hoping to avoid the worst of the afternoon heat while driving in the morning. Stella is one fantastic machine, but she does not have air conditioning, and sometimes it is like driving in a blast furnace with the windows down. We drive through the red desert of roadkill and broken retreads and reach Uluru in the early afternoon. We spend an hour in the visitor center and then mosey down to the Rock. Uluru, or Ayers Rock, and Kata Tujuta, which is what the Aborigines call the Olgas, are the relic of an immense bed of sedimentary rock now covered by wind-blown sand. It is believed the 36 domes of the Olgas, and I refer to them as the Olgas merely because I can't pronounce the other name very well. I guess I could call them KT. Okay, so the 36 domes of KT were likely once a single massive dome of rock, many times the size of Uluru. There's been a ban on climbing the Rock since, I think, 2017. But when we were there was a well-trodden route to the top that is probably 5'2" climbing grade and is protected by a chain link handrail. It's perfectly safe. We climb hoping that the voracious flies at ground level will dissipate the higher we go. We don't make it all the way to the cairn on top, which marks the summit, before the setting sun drives us down. I play some hack while waiting for a spectacular sunset, which never materializes. Then we have to kill some time before scamming our way into the caravan park to avoid paying the $16 fee. See, the deal is that the gate is unmanned at night, so if you go in late, you just find an open spot and pay the next day. If you leave before the gate is manned in the morning, you're golden. So we go to the Uluru Tavern and buy some beers and kill time. The bottle shop has signs that declare, at the request of the local Aboriginal community, they refuse to sell alcohol to native inhabitants. Additionally, they ask that you refrain from purchasing it for them. So naturally, as soon as I leave the tavern, I am accosted by an older Aborigine pleading with me to buy him some grog. I take pity on the poor guy and buy him a couple boxes of Moselle. I don't know if I did the right thing. Probably not. But the experience of a grown man asking another to buy him some wine was enough. If they want to reduce alcoholism within the Aboriginal community, I reason, there must be a better way than having visiting tourists deny them. We pull into the caravan park and find an empty spot and make ourselves at home. We fire up the Barbie and make some scrumptious lamb chops. Ooh, they're so good. The next morning, we are off at dawn with the dual purpose of catching the sunrise and avoiding the $16 camping fee, and we are successful on both counts. I don't know if this scam still works, but we use it to good effect. The sunrise, however, is not spectacular. We go to the ranger station and make tea and breakfast and nap a bit more before walking around the rock. We make a complete circumnavigation of the rock and visit Maggie Springs and the Kangaroo's Tail. The rock art here seems more jumbled and less well preserved than at Carnarvon Gorge, but there are some interesting little side canyons into the rock. Then we do the climb for real this time, all the way to the summit marker. The view from the top is quite impressive, and the vastness of the rock monolith inspires awe. We scramble about the vast summit plateau for quite a while. The view of the Olgas from here beckons from 30 kilometers away, and they are going to be our next stop. So we drive to the Valley of the Four Winds and charge around the loop in quite a bit less than the recommended 4 hours. More like an hour and a half. Mostly due to the voracious flies everywhere. We shove small twigs into our straw hats to deter them landing on our face, but this is only marginally effective. We prefer the Olgas to the rock, and the valleys between the rock formations are truly amazing. The flies are as amazing as well, and they do their best to make any hike miserable. We catch a pretty nice sunset and get some good pictures of the rock before hitting up the tavern again. No Aboriginals hanging out and eating alcohol tonight, and we successfully scam into an empty camping spot and have a very restful night. Our bodies are tired from all the hiking and climbing. Sunday, September 1st, 1991, we have decided that we have ticked all the boxes here, and we're going to head out. We were buying some milk for our tea when Greta spies Peter Garrett, lead singer for the Australian rock band Midnight Oil. She asks for a photo, but he claims to be allergic and begs off. Fair enough. Hell, I wouldn't have even recognized the poor bastard, so I reckon he should have been glad we even asked. We retrace our route back down the Retread and Roadkill Highway and reach Alice Springs by late afternoon. We don't even stay, just get gas and supplies and drive. North this time, with Darwin as the final destination. It's about 1,500 kilometers away. We stop at a roadside about 100 kilometers outside of Alice and make camp. The next day is another marathon road day, and we make it almost to Warramungu, or 3 ways north of Tennant Creek. It is a long day of driving. We're off again the next morning. The distances involved in driving the Australian Outback are huge and empty. We meet up with Paul and Janet again at some little bumfuck town, which just goes to show how hard we've been pushing it. We decide to meet up again in the evening at the hot springs in Mataranka. On the way, we stop at a little pub in Daly Waters. Greta wants to stay for the $10 beef and barramundi barbecue, but the hot springs are calling. So we drive on and arrive in early evening. Stop at a bottle shop for some refreshment and slip into the warm water. It is just what the doctor ordered after a long day in the saddle. The only drawback is all the bats. We have a shower and a grilled barramundi dinner with wine. We end up getting pretty pissed at the outdoor bar, even though the punk-ass young Aussie with an attitude provoked me by calling me a seppo. Like I wouldn't understand his reference. But we've been in Australia long enough to know. Seppo means septic tank, which comes from Yank. And the implication is that Americans are shit, and I know exactly what he's saying, and I'm not having it. It almost comes to blows. We leave before it comes to that and make camp just outside the springs at a little roadside pullout. And we're on the road early again. There is no sleeping in this heat. We have a short day driving only a little more than 100 kilometers to Catherine, or Nitmiluk. We stop at the tourist info office and book a canoe trip on the Catherine River. We will go for a day and a half and leave tomorrow morning. We get a few provisions from the store, but we are mostly stocked up, and we drive the 30 kilometers to Nitmiluk National Park. Here, the Catherine River has carved a series of 13 spectacular gorges in the sandstone. The gorges and surrounding landscape have great ceremonial significance for the local Jawoyan people, its custodians. In the Jawoyan language, Nitmiluk means the place of the cicada dreaming. We check out the visitor center and then go down for a swim. We are assured that there are no dangerous saltwater crocodiles here, only harmless freshwater crocodiles, called Johnstone crocodiles. During the wet season, sometimes the saltwater crocs come down from Kakadu, and swimming is prohibited. But we are here in the dry season, and the smaller freshies rarely get more than about 10 feet long and are not known to attack humans unless provoked, such as by stepping on them. I vow not to step on any crocodiles. We have a swim and meet Fred the pelican with a broken leg, who now loves humans. We start cooking dinner in the parking lot until the ranger comes by and kicks us out in the middle of the preparations. Apparently they close at 7. He's pretty cool about it, though. He says, just go outside the park and do what you like. So we do. There's a little pullout just outside the park, and there's some Brits camping there. The 4 of us, Paul and Janet are with us, by the way. 4 of us join them, and soon some Germans show up. We have a little international village going on here now. I mosey over to say hi and learn that there are 6 of them in a van and have taken 3 weeks to drive here from Perth. We have dinner and wine and converse. Thursday, September 5th, we're up early to pick up our permits and then go to the small store to find fuel for our MSR stove, but we have no luck. So we just decide to take cold food. A can of beans, a can of tuna, and a can of corn will be our dinner. God help us if we forget a can opener. We load up the canoes and begin paddling up the beautiful Catherine Gorge. Paul and Janet have opted for the day trip and will not be spending the night, and are ahead of us. In the wet season there are rapids between the gorges, but now they are a maze of rocks and require us to drag the canoes. It is hard work in the hot sun. The 2nd, 5th, and 9th gorges are meant to be the best, but between the 3rd and the 4th gorge is a long 1,000-meter stretch of rock. This is where we have lunch, and Paul and Janet turn back after lunch. Greta and I are lucky, as there are 2 girls here who want to swap canoes. We will take their upstream canoe, and they will take our downstream one. We'll still have to pull it back across the rocks going back, but it is better than having to do it both ways. After lunch, we say goodbye to Paul and Janet and hike our gear to our new boat. We paddle the 4th gorge and find a nice campsite and then dump our stuff. We continue paddling up the 5th and, to our minds, the most spectacular gorge. The end brings us to a mass of rock, which we decide to not negotiate with the canoe. Instead, we continue on foot. By this I mean we swim and walk from here on out. The 6th gorge has a series of rock bars with only short pools of water between them. We swim and walk our way to the end of the 7th gorge, and we stop at the beginning of the 8th. It is a fantastic experience swimming through these beautiful gorges in sweet water. We see a few crocodiles, and they make us a bit uneasy, but don't seem to pay us any mind. It is weird, though, to see a snout in the water only yards away. We swim and scramble back to our camp, where we find there are a pair of Brits when we arrive, and we make small talk. They are traveling in a VW van as well. We make it an early night. It has been an exhausting day. The night is hot and buggy. We wake at dawn and have no tea to wake us for the paddle back downstream. There's a different atmosphere up here in the early morning, with no one around and the early morning light reflecting off the walls. It's truly a magical place, and I kind of wish we had a few more days here. We return our canoes at noon and notify the rangers of our safe return. In town, there's a large parade of colorfully dressed Aborigines, but we aren't able to figure out the occasion. We stock up at the store for kakadu and head up the road again, ever northward. We find a shortcut, which saves us almost 500 kilometers of driving, but it involves 100 kilometers on a dirt road, but it's worth it. We are in Kakadu National Park by dark and find a campsite by the South Alligator River, where a large sign warns of the presence of crocodiles. We have a dinner of burgers and veggies and have an early night, as it has been another long, exhausting day. We learn later that the area now known as Kakadu National Park has been inhabited for at least 25,000 years, possibly for twice that long. The Aboriginals are entwined with the park itself and have been for basically forever, like 40,000 years. Kakadu is 200 kilometers long and 100 kilometers wide, and it is one of the largest national parks in Australia. It's lucky that it is a protected area, as the whole park is now surrounded by uranium mines. My sleep is not restful. Between the heat and bugs and possible presence of large carnivorous animals, I am up half the night. We get up and have tea and drive into Coimbra to book a tour on the Yellow River Billabong for tomorrow morning. A billabong, by the way, in case you didn't know, is an oxbow lake which is created when a river changes course, leaving behind the water not connected to the river. So now you know. Then we go to the visitor center and watch a slideshow and pay our $8 entrance fee. Then we go to Jabiru and go to the public pool, where for $1.20 we can swim all day in this huge Olympic-sized pool, and is a great way to escape the heat of the day. In the late afternoon, we go down to Norlangi Rock, or Burrungui, I think, to see the rock art and listen to the rangers' very informative talk. Both are very interesting and worthwhile. We end the day with a hike around the Ang Bang Bang Billabong, say that 3 times fast, and then find a campsite in the Berdolba area. We will have cold chicken, chook as the Aussies say, and veg for dinner, washed down with wine, of course. I've been reading Bruce Chatwin's The Songlines for a glimpse into Aboriginal culture. It's really quite interesting. Each person has a dreaming, which is given to them at their birth by the elders of the tribe. For example, kangaroo dreaming, jabiru dreaming. And this dreaming is part of the creation from the dream time when the earth was formed by the spirit ancestors in human and animal form. The particular individual dreaming is but part of the whole. Each dreaming has a song line, a song following a particular part of the landscape. The song line recreates the country as the singer walks it. There are a myriad of songs for the whole of the country. The rock art reflects beings in the songs and the dream time. It is truly fascinating, and we are ignorant of most of it. Sunday, September 8th, we find that Paul and Janet are also booked on the same Yellow Waters cruise this morning. They pulled into our campsite last night right after I found a scorpion, and I was walking around in bare feet. Anyway, the cruise is amazing. The guides tie a whole chicken carcass onto a long pole and use it to entice the crocodiles to leap several feet out of the water chasing it. It kind of makes you think when you're seated in a boat within a foot or two of the water's surface. But the really spectacular sight is the birds, both in number and variety. White ibis, red-crowned jacanas, or Jesus birds, sea eagles, kingfishers, darters, a beautiful and magnificent jabiru stork, night herons, plumed ducks, magpie geese, and that's all I know. There were more. It was well worth the $20 fee. Afterwards, we walk up to the Marai lookout, and I find a piece of stringy bark branch that is almost, but not quite, hollowed out by termites for a nice didgeridoo. Then we drive out to Norlangi Rock again and walk to the Namgilawar Gallery, which is nice in its isolation, but the art is not so spectacular. The heat drives us again to the pool for the late afternoon, and afterwards we pick up and camp at Malabang Bang Jigdu, something like that. The next morning we drive up the badly corrugated road slowly to Uluru. It is rough but worth it. I think this is the most impressive art that I've seen. Perhaps the ranger talk educated us to a deeper appreciation. There are great examples of contact art, or art made after contact with white people. Lots of good fish and other food art. And there are Mimi spirits on the impressively high ceilings. How did they get there? Who knows? The Aboriginals say that the Mimi painted them there. And I almost have to believe them, because I can't imagine how ancient hunter-gatherers got up there to paint them. Mimis, in case you didn't know, are fairy-like beings with thin, elongated bodies. So thin, a strong wind will break them. So they live in rock crevices. According to Aboriginal folklore, Mimi had human form and made the first rock paintings before the Aboriginal people arrived in northern Australia. The Mimi taught the Aboriginal people how to paint and how to hunt and cook kangaroo meat. The Mimi are considered to be mischievous, but generally harmless. We go down to Manugari Monsoon Rainforest Walk and see a huge colony of flying foxes, fruit bats. They make quite the racket and have a distinctive and not entirely pleasant smell. In the early afternoon, we drive back to the main highway and turn Stella towards Darwin. On the way, we stop at the Mamukala wetlands. The number of birds here is absolutely mind-boggling. We are fortunate to borrow binoculars from another guy who was there to be able to really see the magnitude of the spectacle. But we don't stay long and make camp at the appropriately named Leaving Tree Nature Reserve. We have a bit of a scare there when the sky becomes red with the glare of an approaching brush fire, but it must be controlled because it soon goes out. Kakadu National Park is a gem. To me, it and the Great Barrier Reef epitomize everything that Australia is all about. The wonder and beauty of the unique natural forces at play here are mesmerizing. The morning of Tuesday, September 10th, 1991, and a short drive brings us to Territory Wildlife Park, a small zoo of local animals. Our student cards get us in for $4, and that's good because it's not even really worth $4. The aquarium was pretty good, and the nocturnal house was interesting. Everything else was kind of, We leave in early afternoon for Darwin and the end of our road here in Australia. The only thing for us to do here is sell the van and move on to Indonesia. We cruise into town and almost immediately find Dave and Heidi outside the American Express. They sold their van the first day, So that might be some good news. We get mail, go shopping, and find Paul and Janet down at the transit center on Mitchell Street. The Mitchell Street car market. Janet is sick and vomiting. I'm guessing it's a self-inflicted wound that occurred before we got here. The rest of us go out for beers and fish and chips, followed by a movie. With a student card, movies are $5 on Tuesdays and $7 every other day. We see City Slickers with Billy Crystal and come back and piss it up until the wee hours, until we are warned about our noise. Paul and Janet go back to their caravan park while we try sleeping in the parking lot, until we get kicked out by the same asshole who warned us about the noise. So we go to the street, but I don't like it there. So I try to find the caravan park, but get lost. Finally, I find a nice little park with another camper van already there. I pull in and crawl back to find out that Greta has been quietly snoozing through the whole thing. We are awakened at an ungodly hour by a representative of the Darwin City Council. He writes us a warning citation, and we roll over and go back to sleep in a vain attempt to warn off an impending hangover. The citation states basically that if they catch us again, it'll cost us a $200 fine. All these months in Australia, and now we find the assholes at the end. We wake up at 9 and go into town to the bank and the travel agent and out to Lee Point Caravan Park, where Paul and Janet are staying. We spend the entire day cleaning and shining everything in Stella. We unload everything and sweep and clean and polish the entire car. And by 7 p.m. she is spotless. We put up the sign for sale at $49.50 and go into town to see Terminator 2. Thursday, September 12th, is our first day parked at the Mitchell Street car market. Not much action. Too many cars, not enough buyers, and everyone that is buying is looking for cheaper cars. All day and no serious offers. Friday, September 13th, is a lucky day. We sit by the van on Mitchell Street and sweat. Dave and I go didgeridoo shopping. But a good one is really expensive, and it is looking like I will leave Australia without one, because a good one is what I want. I drive him out to TNT Air Couriers to mail his stuff home. No serious offers on the van. We have beers in the evening. The girls have a night out while the guys sit in the Victoria Hotel and have beer after beer. A big rainstorm came through last night, but today is a scorcher. We get a few lookers, but no offers. Paul and Janet sell their trusty Holden station wagon to a Norwegian couple. Paul is happy to have sold the car, but sad to be leaving. We have a little party to celebrate. Dave and Heidi are flying to Denpasar, Bali tomorrow. We will cross paths with Dave again later, without Heidi. We piss it up in the courtyard behind the transit center with the big banyan tree. I try to take it easy as I can see that I will be driving everyone home. There are lots of laughs, and we all go home happy. The next morning we take Paul and Janet and their stuff into town. Then we take Dave and Heidi out to the airport for their flight. There are new faces in town as a flight came in from Indonesia today. All in all, a quiet day on the van sale front. We leave early to sort out our stuff to mail out tomorrow. All of our camping and climbing gear is going back home. We will be traveling on backpacks in Indonesia, and we need to slim down considerably. We finally sell the van for $3,700 on Monday, September 3rd. So we end up getting $300 less than we bought it for in Sydney. So really, Stella has been an incredible bargain. We party like drunken rednecks on payday and then fly to Kupang, Timor in Indonesia on Wednesday the 25th on the Merpati air flight. I don't really realize it at the time, but from here on out we will be spending an inordinate amount of time bargaining and haggling over transport. We have lost our means of self-transport and thus our control over when and how we will get to where we're going. As a traveler, this is huge. You always pay for the transport, but when it is simple as a stop at a gas station, it's far easier than haggling with BMO bus and taxi drivers. We've been in Australia for 9 months, and we've done a pretty good job covering the country. But there's much that we have missed. I really wished we could have gone to Melbourne for one thing, but this country is so immense. It has been a roller coaster of once-in-a-lifetime experiences, like diving on the Great Barrier Reef, and deep personal disappointments, like having people you thought were your friends steal from you. But all in all, the positives far outweigh the negatives, as they usually do. We are excited to begin the adventure anew in Asia. Up until now, we have been in English-speaking countries and have had our own transport. The travel has been relatively easy. This is all about the change in ways that we don't even know yet. And this, my friends, is where episode 2 picks up and where I will leave you tonight. I will post on the podcast page the proper sequence for listening to these episodes in chronological order. I will also do that at the end of the next episode, which will be the last in this series. But I will find you again somewhere down the road. Until then, thank you so much for listening, and be kind to each other.